Hi guys, so listen, I wanted to air this clip from our Silk Road episode. The Dark History of Silk Road, did you watch it? Story was so wild and I couldn't believe it was real. Plus, just recently, there's been an update from this story. So stay tuned because I'm going to mention the update at the end of the clip. When you hear the name Silk Road, close your eyes, what do you picture? Because I picture... What's that? Isn't it like that vegan milk? It's not vegan. Isn't it called silk something? That's what I think of. That. I think of milk. Yeah. Well, that's not why Ross called it Silk Road. Ross actually got the name Silk Road from a real thing in history. Hence the name Dark History. Full circle. Full circle. I can't talk today. More than 2,000 years ago, there was a trade route that carried everything. Porcelain, cannabis, spices, gold, gunpowder, and silk. But it wasn't just goods that were traded on the original Silk Road through China. It was religion, philosophy, and information. All of these things would lead to innovations in technology that changed the world forever. And that's why Ross chose the name Silk Road. I mean, he was hoping his website would do for the internet what the original Silk Road did for the real world. But there's one other thing we need to know about the original Silk Road for this story. There was a third thing that spread across the Silk Road. Can you guess? It was the bubonic plague. Remember bubonic plague? Bubonic plague? So even though the original Silk Road spread ideas and goods, it also spread disease and death. LOL. Anyway, Ross launched his site, Silk Road, in February of 2011. But he had one problem. He freaking didn't have access to the things he wanted to sell on Silk Road, aka he didn't have the drugs to sell, you know? Not to mention that because of how the dark web worked, nobody was going to find his website by accident like they would like on the normal internet. So Ross needed product and he needed a way to get people to his site. So one day Ross went online and found out that it's actually really freaking easy to make homemade hallucinogenic mushrooms. Good for him. He's just DIY king over here. So Ross started his website off by selling shrooms. And to promote his magic mushrooms, Ross posted on forums all over the normal internet under the screen name Silk Road. He advertised this amazing new website on the dark web, which is also called Silk Road. And you can buy magic mushrooms there. So head on over and get started now. Ross grew 10 pounds of mushrooms and sold all 10 in under a week. In just under a week. I feel like that just makes a big difference. Almost immediately, other people started to notice Silk Road's potential and they wanted in on the action. So other people started selling drugs on Silk Road. Silk Road was already becoming a success. But in June 2011, things really started to take off when the website Gawker wrote a glowing review of Silk Road on the normal internet. The article went viral, and within weeks, Ross pulled in his first $1 million. Yeah, within weeks. Good for him. But the busier the website got, the less time Ross had to enjoy his newfound wealth. Ross was the only person working on Silk Road at this time, and he was starting to get a little overwhelmed. Okay? He knew that in order to sustain the website's success, he would need some freaking help. And that's when Ross received an email from somebody named Variety Jones. Now, Variety Jones wasn't this guy's real name. His actual name was Roger Clark, but Ross, he didn't know that. Like everybody else Ross met on the dark web, Variety always just went by his screen name. We don't know too much about Variety Jones except that he was an internet hacker who noticed a hole in Silk Road's code that could allow other hackers to steal thousands of Bitcoin from Silk Road's customers. Now, even though Variety Jones could have taken down Silk Road, he didn't want to. In fact, Variety Jones wanted in. So he emailed Ross about this hole in Silk Road's code, and Ross fixed it right away. And then the two kept talking, quickly becoming good friends. And eventually, Variety Jones even became Ross's mentor in how to run a criminal enterprise. Now, Variety had a lot of experience committing crimes on the internet, or at least that's what he told Ross. And Variety gave Ross an important piece of advice. What Silk Road was doing was illegal, so Ross needed to protect himself from the government. And in order to do that, Ross needed a new name. And Variety even had that figured out too, obviously. The name he said Ross should use was the Dread Pirate Roberts. So, Dread Pirate Roberts. Look, I'm not going to say that 100 times, okay? This name comes from the movie The Princess Bride. You remember that movie? The character of the Dread Pirate Roberts is the most fearsome pirate in the world, but the twist is he isn't a real person. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, it's a name adopted by somebody who proves themselves to be the best pirate around. So whoever the Dread Pirate Roberts is, whenever they get tired of being the Dread, I'm gonna call him DPR, okay? Whenever they get tired of being the DPR, they can just hand the name off to somebody else. Variety told Ross this would be like the perfect cover, you know? If the law ever came down on Ross, he could pass the name off to someone else and pretend he was just filling the role, right? Yeah. So in early 2012, Ross officially retired his old Silk Road username and deleted all his old forum posts about mushrooms on the internet so he could cover his ass, and then officially became known as the Dread Pirate Roberts. Under his new name, Ross hired some employees to help him run Silk Road by using an encrypted chat program on the dark web and paid them in Bitcoin. They must be super rich now. They all had weird screen names. Cirrus, Digital Alchemy, Smedley, and like all of them are anonymous, but all of them way more experienced in drug crimes than Ross. Within months, Silk Road was completely overhauled by Ross and his new employees. One historian described the new and improved Silk Road as user-friendly and, quote, almost hilariously similar to Amazon, complete with a cart in the upper right-hand corner, end quote. But, you know, instead of TVs, makeup, or pet products, there were helpful icons for cannabis, ecstasy, opioids. Sorry, I'm struggling with opioids. There we go. And then there was even a seller's guide section that had like helpful instructions on how to vacuum seal or hide drugs when shipping them. So it's very helpful. Criminals helping criminals. Love to see it. So to Ross, this was the freedom he had been searching for his entire life, okay? He had gone from a book dealer to a successful drug kingpin overnight. I would call him a drug entrepreneur. How about that? I like that better. He was pulling in millions of dollars from all over, boom, 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 the globe. But you can't make that kind of money in the USA without attracting attention from the government. So just a few months after Silk Road launched, Ross became one of the freaking most wanted men on the planet. So let's recap for a second. Ross Ulbricht really liked drugs, but he also wanted to make a name for himself. He stumbled upon Bitcoin and the dark web and got the idea to combine all of his interests into a website that sold drugs for Bitcoin anonymously and became a millionaire basically overnight. But there's one important part of the story I haven't told you yet, because it turns out from the very beginning of this Silk Road story, there's been another character lurking in the background, and that character, Homeland Security. Yeah. Boo. Homeland Security is the branch of the government responsible for public security and are focused primarily on border security, cybersecurity, and catching terrorists. So it's kind of a big deal that Silk Road was on their radar, okay? But it didn't start as public enemy number one. I mean, at first, the Homeland Security team just wanted to get a little drugs and party, you know? And then they were like, oh, whoops, can't do that. I'm just kidding. At first, it was just one Homeland Security agent who noticed something wasn't right about Silk Road. This guy's name was Jared. Oh, God, Jared. Remember the subway guy, Jared? Yeah, he turned out to be a shithead, huh? Fuck that guy. Anyways, one day in June of 2011, Jared was sitting in his office when he got a call from a guy named Mike. Mike worked as a border protection officer at Minnesota Airport, and he told Jared, like, hey, we intercepted this piece of mail. It's an envelope, but on the inside is just a single pink pill. The weird thing is, it has a squirrel engraved on the side. End quote. Now, normally when Homeland Security gets a call like this, it's not treated like as a big deal, Most agents have gone on record saying that crimes this small get logged and forgotten. We appreciate the honesty. And since there are bigger cases like to work on, involving like felony level amounts of drugs, this would have been nothing, right? But Jared had only been working for Homeland Security for 2 months. So to him, he's got something to prove, and this was an interesting lead to follow. He's trying to reclaim the name Jared and make it a good name because that Subway Jared really ruined it for everyone. He told Mike he couldn't just fly out to Minnesota to check out like a single pill, but gave him his personal number and told him to report back if anything similar happened again, which I'm sure he was like, sure, call me back if something happens, thinking like nothing's gonna happen, you know? So for a few months, Mike went about his daily business of checking the mail, coming through the Minnesota airport for anything suspicious to report back to Jared. But he didn't really find anything until October 5th, 2011, when he found another plain white envelope with a single bump in the middle. And sure enough, the bump was another tiny pink pill with a squirrel. That sounds cute, just like the one he found before. So Mike picked up the phone and dialed Agent Jared. Now apparently, Agent Jared had become a bit obsessed with small drug seizures ever since that first phone call. And the pink pill was like, I guess it was an ecstasy tablet, because he took it and he was like, what? No, I was kidding. Wouldn't you though? I would. Wouldn't you? I'd be like, what's this? We'll find out. But he finds out it's an ecstasy tablet somehow. Wink, wink. And Jared had started hearing about like a number of similar discoveries of single ecstasy tablets down at Chicago's O'Hare Airport, the one where they filmed Home Alone. When Jared first heard about these pills, there were only 3 to 5 packages every other day that contained small amounts of ecstasy. But by the time Mike called Jared in October, there were now like 30 to 50 packages like these every single day at the O'Hare Airport. Each package was addressed to an individual person at their homes, which is just kind of messy when you think about it. But the easiest ones to find were drugs taped like on the inside of CD and DVD cases or single pills in envelopes. But some of the other drugs were more cleverly hidden. For example, there was this one package that had nothing in it but a small piece of cardboard. And you know how on the sides of cardboard, there's like those tiny ripples and holes? Yeah, you know. Well, there were tiny pink ecstasy tablets stuffed inside of each of those holes. I love a puzzle. That's fun. So there was a lot of effort being made to send small amounts of drugs to people, and Jared wanted to know who was behind it. So Jared now decided he had enough evidence to perform what's called a knock and talk, which is exactly what it sounds like. What does it sound like? Knock, knock. Who's there? Talk, talk. I don't know. Jared went to one of the addresses that had ordered some of these drugs and knocked on the door. But the guy who answered the door, it wasn't the person whose name was on the envelope. It was like the roommate. So Jared asked the roommate if he ever noticed anything a little unusual about his roommate's mail. And the roommate immediately said, yeah, he's ordering a lot of drugs online from this website called Silk Road. Now, initially, Jared was like, okay, what is Silk Road? But the roommate had a severe case of verbal diarrhea, so he just keeps talking and talking and talking. And the roommate tells Jared, think Amazon, but for drugs. And he goes into great detail about how you can find anything on Silk Road, how it's on the dark web, and how every order is bought exclusively with Bitcoin. Now, Jared heads back to his office, and the first thing he thinks is there's no way I'm the first one to stumble across this website. But he goes on his computer and finds out there are no open cases involving the words Silk Road in the Homeland Security database. He tries typing similar keywords, but nothing comes up, Nothing's coming up. So with no other options, Jared Googles it. And after digging through a few hits related to the historical Silk Road, Jared comes across that Gawker article I mentioned earlier, remember? This is an article on the normal internet talking about how to buy drugs on the dark web. So Jared was shooketh. So, as he reads the article, he finds out that the owner of the website is named the Dread Pirate Roberts. DPR for short. Yeah, DPR. But who is DPR? Nobody seemed to know. So Jared reports back to Homeland Security saying like, hey, there's something huge going on here. And Homeland Security, they agree. So later that fall, an investigation was officially opened into Silk Road. At first, investigators found that most of the people who went on Silk Road were looking for a safer alternative to buying drugs. No more risk of police chases, no more shady back alley deals. This was a way to get drugs sent directly to your home. There were even anonymous community groups on the website where people would talk about keeping drug use recreational, where they would hold each other accountable to avoid becoming addicted. That sounds super great, right? Well, because of how accessible drugs became due to Silk Road, there was a huge increase in the United States in drug use and drug deaths. One study said that by the time Silk Road ended, nearly 20% of all U.S. drug users had purchased narcotics from Silk Road. Or they're just saying that to, prove that they did something good. You decide. Across the world, drugs purchased from Silk Road were confirmed to have led to at least 6 overdose deaths, including 2 16-year-olds who had purchased something called an N-bomb. Yeah. An N-bomb is supposed to be a cheaper synthetic version of LSD, but unlike LSD, you can overdose on it. Federal agencies all around the United States wanted to put a stop to this, and they wanted to put a stop to it fast. No one's going to be making millions of dollars without me coming in, Jared, and fucking shit up, So investigators decided to reach out to the FBI. Yeah. Now, drug crimes weren't the jurisdiction of the FBI, but the investigators had uncovered other stuff on Silk Road that did fall under their jurisdiction. It turns out that Silk Road's whole anything goes approach to retail had expanded into other illegal activities. Things like guns, for-profit internet hacking, fake IDs, fake social security numbers, girl, you name it, whatever. If it was shady, they were doing it. And according to the FBI, even murder for hire postings. Oh yeah, you want to kill your husband, babe? Just a little beep bop boop. 2 clicks, check out, you're good. So easy. What if you could murder your husband with Prime? So in September of 2012, the FBI's cyber branch began an investigation with the goal of finding the Silk Road server who was running it and ending the whole damn criminal enterprise. Burn it down. So crazy update. On January 22nd, 2025, President Trump has officially pardoned Ross Ulbricht, the founder of Silk Road. Why did he pardon him? For that homie hookup is what I was thinking. I wonder what Ross is going to be doing now. He stole the name Silk Road, or maybe borrowed the name Silk Road from an actual trading route from history, right? So I wonder what his next business will be. Oregon Trail? Huh? Candyland? That would be actually more fun. I don't know. But we'll be watching, and we'll see what happens.